Okay, hi, my name is Tarina and I am here again with the new tutorial, this time on tail. And it kind of came related to this question that Hoxyboxy56 asked over on YouTube. They asked, could you please do some tutorial on fur, answer on how to go on about big tufts of it. And there's some typos, but they are asking about the weight painting and the different edge flows of the hair done, and they are admitting that they are a beginner, and that is great. That is great. Before I start going on to the tutorial, I'll quickly go over the options when it comes to executing hair in 3D. First, hair type that comes to mind when thinking about 3D hair is particle hair. It looks so good and some very realistic, but it's very heavy and not really for real-time rendering. I took an example from Zootopia because there is a very good video on how they executed their hair for that movie. The second option is what I call shader magic, but it is shell texturing, where planes of the same texture are displayed on top of each other, making the volume of the texture look bigger and with varying scales, giving it the fuzzy look. That kind of simulates hair. The downsides of it doesn't look good from all angles, because from some angles you can see the planes and you can notice that the hairs are not individual strands, and it doesn't really do long hairs very well for that same reason, unless you like increase the amount of layers so much that it starts to hinder the performance. Examples of shell texturing would be from a mobile game, Mobile Legends Bang Bang. Nana's tail is done with shell texturing. Very noticeable example, Great Grey Wolf Sif from Dark Souls uses shell texturing, and it's very obvious. And also Krunker from Krunker, Live and Reloaded. And here too we can clearly see all the layers. The third version of hair done in 3D, but the second and maybe the best option for realistic hair is hair cards, and it is good for real-time rendering. The fur can be individually textured, giving it the realism option, and it can be combined with multiple types of hair with different varying lengths and thicknesses. It takes more time to execute, and it requires transparency from the shader. There's a typo there, ignore it. And I took a lot of examples from the same studio, Little Red Zombies, who are a outsourcing studio who specialize in hair, and you can see why these look absolutely amazing, don't they? I had to take all these examples because I love their work. And examples from Baldur's Gate, the squirrel. These you can actually see the hair cards a little bit easier on these models because they're a little bit more lightweight. And Olber is a good example where you can see the planes of hair. Okay, so hair cards, they are made out of textures of these swaps of hair. This is a set by Ryan Sainsbury that you can actually buy from ArtStation. I have purchased this set and used it, and I like it. And here's a picture from realtimehair.com where they show what the hair cards actually look like on a hair like this. Exciting. The third option, and I think the most beginner friendly option, and works well with all the toony shaders and all the anime, like this character has the anime shader, anime style. So this works, is mesh hair. So the hair is made out of a 3D mesh. It's fast to do and it supports real-time rendering, and only downside is that it doesn't really do realism well, or you can't do realism on it well, but you can do all kinds of stylized stuff. I took two examples of this. The 2D, it requires backface culling. My hair, for an example on this model, the front hair is 2D, and the tufts on the ears, the blue ones, they are 3D meshes of mesh hair.
Okay, that was the theory. Time to get to the tutorial.
How I would do a tail, I would do it with the curves. So basically curves are made out of 2 points that have handles that you can control and move around. And curves behave a little bit differently than meshes. For one, when you try to scale a curve, you scale actually just the handle points, or rotate it, you just rotate the handle points. I will go more in depth into tweaking that in later, but let's first set up the tail base. That's quite a thin tail, so let's go to top view, rotate it, scale X 0, and let's put the location on 0. There we go. If you don't have that open, you can get it out with an N button. There we go. So now we have this curve, and let's call it tail. It is gonna be our tail. In edit mode, we can move it around as the whole thing. And let's now give it some shape. And we do that with another curve. We do it with the circle curve. And we can move this to a side as long as the origin moves with it. So don't move it in edit mode. Move it with object mode. There we go. And let's tweak it a bit. We have a curve object data properties panel here where we can lower the amount of vertices on it and make it more tail shaped. That is pretty good. And then we go to the tail and we give it this shape. And we do that when we have this one selected. It might be hidden, but it's in geometry, in the object data properties, geometry, bevel, object, and we select the object we want to bevel it with. And now it is beveled. Wow. Then in edit mode, we can change the size. It's quite large now. We can change the size by changing this size. But we probably don't want the whole curve to be the same scale. So we can select one point. Move it a bit forward. And then scale it here with Alt S. Alt S. And we can give it a number like 0 to make it pointed. Ta-da! And if you can't see the geometry there, I prefer having it put on wireframe. Because here we can actually see when we scale, for an example, this one, or move it or scale it, we can see the geometry move with it. You can add by extruding, but you can't do that in the middle, obviously. We need to subdivide it with right click, subdivide. And we can give it a curve, but usually if you're gonna weight paint or like animate things, you don't make it into a pose. So you have it in the like as rigid of a pose as possible, if that makes sense. So we want it to keep it straight. Right now the tail doesn't look very fluffy, so we need to add the fluff. We're gonna take this and add it a couple of fluffy parts to break down the silhouette, to make it look fluffy. And we do that by making the first steps again. I'll do it right now. Okay, now we have one hair that we can start attaching to this one. With Ctrl T, you can tilt the bevel. We just want to break the silhouette. And obviously the more you do these, the better the result will be, but you don't want a very high poly, so keep the poly count in check. And obviously your tail will look like the tail you've done, and my tail will look like a tail I'm doing for a demo. There we go. Now these, we have big stuff. Duplicate them. Move them to the new collection. And just, yeah, hide them. We don't need them for now, but it's good to keep them for safekeeping in case of an emergency. And we convert these to a mesh. Like so. Now they are a mesh, so we can edit these vertices. And if there are parts where there are too many words or too little words, we can tweak them here. For an example, on this one, I would add a loop there. Additionally, if you want to sculpt this, you want to edit it, let's first merge all the tips, because the tips are made out of multiple points. They look like one, but they are made out of multiple. So we're gonna merge them. Now there should not be any, these tips all should be like cleaned. We can go to sculpt mode. And when you go to sculpting here, it automatically switches to sculpt modes and gives you this nice view of the model. Obviously, you can also go to sculpt mode here, where you keep your view settings. You can go to the tool properties and switch, well, if topology is off, you're moving all of them. If topology is on, you're moving just one at a time. If you switch the tool, for an example, I am working on this small tuft and I want it to be a little slimmer, I go to inflate and put it on slimming up here or from here. You need to remember to add the topology if you still want to use it, because it doesn't transfer, these settings don't transfer between tools. I would not start sculpting in detail or anything like that, just edit the overall shape. The overlapping is fine, you don't need to worry about the overlapping that much, just as long as you know what is going on. Because I bet at this point our tails look quite different. Like if you're following along this tutorial, it would be fun to see what you created. If you want to share with me, you can share on Discord. Go back to the edit mode, and here we can see again if the topology is lacking on some parts. For an example, here there's quite a lax amount of topology. Okay, and then we optimize this, and this is like the hardest part of this tutorial, so be patient. Let's do duplicates of every object and hide the second versions. Take the biggest tufts there and isolate them with the slash and numpad. And these we're gonna merge together. The way we approach this is first starting up simple by just looking at it and deciding what we want to keep. We want to keep these parts separate, the tips, right? We can mark the parts where they start with seams. I have it in quick favorites to mark a seam, as I do it quite a lot. It is behind right click. And if you want to mark it as favorite, you can right click after you've right clicked and add it to favorites here. The favorites panel comes from Q. And now what we do is we hide these parts, selecting. They are separated by seams, so you can L select them. And we are left with this end and this end. And now we just keep all these edges. We don't want to move them. But otherwise, we merge everything. Speed this part up a bit, but what I will be doing is just combining the parts. For an example, this one I'd move here with GG. I'll take these and attach it there at last. And I try not to use the cut tool to create new vertices for them to meet, but to clean later. We'll be doing first, we're gonna attach all the corn, this end and this end, and I'll come back when I'm ready. Okay, now I am gonna start attaching these parts together, and to make it easier for myself, I will be L-selecting parts and hide them and just do them one by one. And I will be again seaming and link selecting to ease my time. So I will be taking kind of both sides. For an example, when I merge these two, I take vertices and merge them. I have the snap tool enabled to snap to vertices, and then I have also the auto merge vertices. And once I've merged all those, I would take seams, mark them as seams. So I know that's again like outside. So every seam means we keep this. I'll come back to you once I've attached this top part, and I'll first work only on the top parts. And I will be left with a lot of stuff inside, everything already seamed to be link selected and deleted. Now that we've done that, all the outside parts, you notice that all of these, even if I do my best, the insides do get selected with link select. So we need to start cleaning up the seams from the inside, and we do that by hiding parts. Like there. We can easily spot these. And we can actually delete that face for now. Delete the faces where it is clear that the cut goes between these. Now we should be able to link select the internal parts. Delete the faces from that. Now we can easily get all these just filled. When you fill, which side your cursor is on affects the fill. So in general, it's good to have the cursor on the direction where you want to fill in. And if you have a huge hole like this, you can fill it with F, and with Ctrl T, triangulate it. The first layer is done, and it becomes prettier if we auto smooth it. At this point, we can clear all the seams by selecting everything and clear seam. Actually, except for these seams. We don't want to clear these. Leave the isolation mode, and we have this geometry. And I think I would go and merge these bigger ones to the geometry, simply because they add quite a bit of redundancy, meaning there are parts inside that don't need to be inside. So I will be doing that, but the small parts we can keep as separate. I'll repeat the same parts as before, but I will first merge it with this object. Okay, and when you join objects like that together, you can still link select these as separate because they don't share vertices with the main shape. Have them attached one by one. So we are gonna hide everything but one of them, and we will make a hole in the main part for this one. I'm making like a spot for it where I plan ahead which vertices, and while I do that I will again be seaming the meeting points. Generally, if you want this part to have a good flow into the other object, you don't want triangles on the meeting points. So like here, how we have a triangle here, this would not be good. How we would fix this is by extending it into a square and here have the triangle. So we have clear loop here without triangles. Triangles are okay to be, they're not like bad per se, but n-gons are the worst. Do not have n-gons in there. And why is that? The game engine or whatever 3D program is actually considering faces like this with 4 parts, like a triangle. This is one face that is shaped this. It draws it like, this time it decided the triangle goes like here. If we want this, to be like downwards V-shaped, join these, and now Blender changes which way it considers the triangles to be. Basics. That's why triangles are fine. Okay, now I will be checking all the normals that they are on the correct side. On the view, we can see face orientation. And we can see some of these are obviously the wrong way around. I'll select everything and first flip from the mesh normals, flip, recalculate outside. And now I will go to these overlapping parts and manually flip them or add faces if that is necessary. I'll fix some of these loops because I think there could be some tweaking done. Like these could have a little bit better looping, so I will be doing that real quick. Okay, so the tail is starting to form, and the topology could use some tweaking still, but I will just head to the next part and We can always edit them later if you find issues with the topology. And prep this for weight painting, and we do that by separating the tips of the fur to be selectable like that. Fine, now that we have made sure that we can link select all these, we can weight paint it easier. Save your progress and let's add an armature. In your case, you probably have a jar actor to attach the armature to. In my case, I do not. I do have a similar approach, but so I will be doing in a way that if I had an armature, even though I don't. So I'll just add a single bone. I usually make one bone that is the length of the whole thing and then subdivide it as many times as is necessary. I have the names visible, and we parent both of these to the armature with Ctrl P, and we put armature deform. This is just easier way to keep this organized. Okay, then I name the bones, and I usually just links to rename and change this to bones and set name new tail. Okay, then I go here and I add a vertex group called tail. I add a vertex group called tail.001. Then we start weight painting, and I usually like to weight paint by first assigning like a clear. I take the length of the first, and I assign it to the tail, then I hide it. Then I take the second one, assign it to the tail one, assign it, hide it. And then when we unhide everything, we take the bones with us to weight paint mode, and we change the pose of the tail to something extreme. And then we select all the bones and smooth them. So with the smooth operation, and we set the selected bones, and here we can kind of like edit how much we want it to. This part I think could use an extra bone. Go to object mode, select the armature, and go to edit mode, and we subdivide this to, and then when we go to weight paint mode, I can add it just by gradienting it, so it'll add like automatically add if you do weight paints. Let's put auto normalize on. Now we have the proximate weight painting. Maybe go to the more detail oriented weight painting, back to weight paint mode. Curve. I don't want it to curve all the way there, I want it to poke out a bit. I put on a mask, then I L select it because it's possible, and I can't choose the bones from here while the mask is on. I will only choose pieces of the mask, so I'll need to choose from here. Like so, I would go around figuring out what looks good, what works, what doesn't work, how do I want it to deform. So this is kind of dependent more on your model than it is like I can't give you straight out answer that will work every time. With the other tufts I would do the same, but I would work the first part totally first till it's finished. And that is how I would do a tail. Okay, I am back with some also new eyes, lol. I'm back with some additional tidbits of information and tips. If you are not certain about your topology, there's a way to select only n-gons. Okay, so I have it in my favorites here, face by sides, and it's a selection mode, and it selects everything with sides and you can make it to greater than 4, so you can find all the pesky little endgones. This is from here, select face by sides, from select all by trait. There we go. You can also smooth out the meeting points of the tufts that are not part of the main tail by transferring the normal data from the main tail to those tails. And I recommend using like a vertex group to only do that to the base of those tufts. In the modifiers tab here, you can add a data transfer modifier, choose the object you want to transfer them to, choose the vertex group where you have only painted in the base, and then transfer the custom normal data for the base, and the nearest kernel to matching face normal is usually good bet. Additionally, you might notice that I have some blue lines here now. They are sharp edges, so you can make edges sharp by marking them sharp. Mark sharp and they will become sharp. And in my past tutorial about goat ears, I went more into detail about sword edges, shading and normals and all that, so refer to that video if that interests you more. Without further ado, thank you for watching it. What has been a long video with quite a few issues and hiccups on the way making it, so it took me a while to finish this, but I hope this was informative and helpful to at least some of you. Thank you, and please consider dropping a follow or coming visit me on Twitch. Bye bye!